Hiraku woke up early after dreaming of his death in his world. He went out and greeted everyone, noting that he never expected to live such a dream life. As a soul, Hiraku faced the god who watches over the world. The god noted that he had lived 39 years, but had a cruel fate. He was betrayed by others and then fell ill with a terminal disease. The god decided to give him a second chance with a body that wouldn't fall ill. Realizing his mistake in Hiraku's awful life, the god wanted to apologize and asked if he had any wish he could grant. After some thought, Hiraku stated he wanted to try farming. He had watched a show about it while he was sick and wished to try it. Additionally, he wasn't good at getting along with others and wanted to farm somewhere with fewer people. Although farming wasn't the god's jurisdiction, he made a call and arranged things. He got permission from the agriculture god to bestow upon Hiraku the power of the almighty farming tool. Hiraku woke up in a forest, happy to be healthy and able to move again. He decided to start his farming life there and wondered how to use the almighty farming tool. The tool magically appeared in his hand, and Hiraku started digging, noting that he wasn't getting tired at all. He liked how soft the soil was and realized he could grow good vegetables there. However, he first needed to worry about food and water. He searched around but couldn't find any water source. Hiraku then decided to dig and find underground water. He summoned his tool, which turned into a shovel, and soon found water. While preparing the ground around the tree, Hiraku searched for food but couldn't find anything. Seeing a smaller tree that would eventually get in his way, Hiraku decided to chop it down. He summoned his tool as an axe and almost got crushed by the falling tree but managed to cut it with a single swing. He then turned his tool into a hatchet and cut the tree into pieces. Realizing it was getting dark, Hiraku tried to start a fire with a magnifying glass, but the sun set. With no way to start a fire, he carved a hole into the large tree and hid inside. He cut some plates and cups, realizing the moon provided enough light for him to see. He then noticed there were 2 moons and realized he must be in another world. The next morning, Hiraku continued clearing the ground around the large tree and cutting more trees. Feeling hungry, he was attacked by a large monster rabbit but managed to kill it with a single swing of his tool. After eating, he decided to make a toilet and dug a large hole with an entrance, gas release hole, and a tree trunk as a seat. As he couldn't relax, he ended up creating a small cabin around the toilet seat. Hiraku then proceeded to cultivate the land, imagining what he could grow. However, he realized he didn't have any seeds. The following morning, he was surprised to see some plants already starting to grow, wondering if it was due to the tool. He decided to build a wall and a ditch around the fields to protect them from rabbits and other beasts. It took him a few days to complete it, but he managed to kill another rabbit. As the plants grew faster, Hiraku hoped they were something edible. He then built a hut, struggling to lift the wood, so he dug inside to give himself more vertical space. One day, he saw 2 dogs outside. They looked a bit rough but not aggressive, so he invited them in and gave them some meat from a boar he had just killed. He noticed one of them was pregnant, and after they ate, she started having birth pains. Hiraku realized she was giving birth and let them stay in his house while he went back to the tree hole for the night. In the morning, he checked on the dogs and saw that the female had given birth to 4 puppies. He gave them some more meat to celebrate. Hiraku thought the dogs would leave, but they decided to stay. As they liked the hut, Hiraku decided to build himself a new house. He ended up growing some tomatoes and enjoyed them. The dogs did some hunting and protected the premises for Hiraku. He named them Kuro and Yuki and the puppies Kuroichi, Kuroni, Kurosan, Kuroyan. Hiraku wanted to build a storehouse, grow more vegetables, and do many other things. Elsewhere, a girl wanted to cross the mountain, but a man told her it was dangerous and asked if she had heard of the Forest of Death. The other side of the mountain was known for being full of monsters. God decides to check on Hiraku on how he is doing as he is sorry for giving him a life fit for a sinner. As he checks on him, he realizes he put him in a dangerous forest known as Forest of Death as realizes he made a mistake yet again. Hiraku had realized that while preparing the ground for farming, if he wishes to plant certain plant, that plant magically starts growing. Hiraku is happy with his life and knows it's thanks to the gods that bestowed it to him. He makes some statues of the 2 gods so that he can thank them. Hiraku decides to try planting some fruits. While they grow, he plays with the dogs, realizing that without them he would feel much more lonely. As the dogs also help him find his way back to his camp, Hiraku is able to travel further into the forest and eventually finds a river. He decides to make a tunnel and get water to his place, but since it's a 30 minutes walk distance, he will be digging for a while and decides to first make a toilet near the river. Hiraku figures that if he turns his tool into a wheelbarrow, he can run around with it and not get tired because of the tool. Hiraku also expands his crop fields, adding more veggies. He grows soybeans and wants to eat them, but doesn't have salt. Time passes and weather starts to get cold. Seeing snow on the mountains, Hiraku wonders how cold it gets here. He decides to start preparing for the winter and gathers some food and wood. A giant spider shows up, however it's friendly and makes a handkerchief for Hiraku. The spider then decides to live in the large tree and loves eating potatoes. In exchange, the spider makes him clothes using the animal pelts Hiraku gives him. Gaining cloth, Hiraku feels more civilized as he now has a good bed, curtains, and clothes. Hiraku decides to name the spider Zabuton. The winter starts. Zabuton no longer comes down the tree and Hiraku guesses he is hibernating. Hiraku feels a bit lonely, but finally the summer comes. The small dogs had grown up and one day they left, however they soon returned with partners. Soon, Zabuton showed up as well and also had kids. As there are now more mouths to feed, Hiraku decides to expand his crops again. Zabuton rings the alarm and Kuro leads Hiraku into the forest. Kuro takes him to a child girl who is naked and entangled in spiderweb. The dogs and spiders are wary of her, but as she asks for help, Hiraku decides to help her. As he gets close, she jumps and bites his neck and then grows up to a young woman. Hiraku wonders if she is a monster. The dogs then attack her and as they beat her up, she turns into a small girl again. Hiraku wonders if she is their enemy as she sucked his blood, but the girl explains she isn't and she had to do it to recover her strength. As she used too much energy, she can't maintain her adult form and clothes. Hiraku wonders why the dogs attacked them and she explains she wanted to take one of them. Feeling bad for her, Hiraku lets her suck more of his blood so that she can recover. Hiraku takes her to his place. The girls is surprised to see a crop field in the forest, but also so many new crops. Hiraku gives her a tomato and she ends up enjoying it and wants to try some other crops as well. The girl reveals her name is Ruarashi, a vampire, and is excited to be able to try so many new veggies. Ru explains she is researching medical plants and ran away as she got in a fight with some nobles who tried to steal her research. Since they kept chasing her and she heard of this forest, she decided to hide in it for a while until things calmed down, but also hoped to find some new plants to inspect. She is surprised that Hiraku is living in this dangerous forest and even tamed the beasts. He is also using some strange magic which allows him to create some tools, all of which excites her even more. Hiraku realizes how rare his chance is as this is the first person he came in contact with. As it may take even more to meet someone else, Hiraku decides to ask Ru to stay alive with him. Ru tries to explain that there are people after her and she is a vampire, but Hiraku doesn't care. Hiraku explains he came here to live alone as he can't deal with people, but now realized he doesn't want to live alone and isn't sure how much more he can handle. Ru agrees, explaining that she doesn't really have a place to go, although she feels embarrassed by his proposal. Next morning, Ru turns a little younger. Hiraku wonders why and she explains that in this form, he will restrain himself from touching her and Hiraku agrees. Hiraku explains he wants to grow some sweet potatoes next. He also tells that Ru is the first villagers. Kuro disagrees and Hiraku then corrects himself stating she is more like 30th villager. Ru wonders if Hiraku can grow some medical herbs and Hiraku agrees to try. Ru states they need to find somehow the right seeds, but Hiraku states he doesn't need seeds. Using magic, Ru helps out by installing lights in the toilet and other places. Hiraku had nearly given up on finding salt, but Ru explains that one of the layers in the soil is mostly salt and is surprised he didn't notice while doing all that digging. Hiraku checks on his fruit garden but realizes it takes more time for them to grow than the veggies. Zabuton sounds the alarm and Hiraku wonders what's going on. He goes with Ru to check it out, only to find another girl being captured by spiders and dogs. She apologizes for attacking them and asks Hiraku for help. As he releases her, she uses magic to heal herself. She then notices Ru and realizes she was hiding in the forest and wants to capture her, but the dogs attack her again. Hiraku takes the girl and Ru back to his place. Ru explains she was in the same situation. The dogs are quite ruthless and magic doesn't really affect them, as they can also dodge spells. The girl wonders who Hiraku is, and blushing, Ru explains he is her husband. The girl then introduces herself as Tia, an angel. Hiraku guesses that she serves God, but Ru explains that angels are a race of warriors who have more muscle than brains. Hiraku wonders why Tia is chasing Ru, and Tia explains Ru has a bounty due to the damage she caused in the town. Ru is always researching strange medicines and concoctions, and as soon as something bothers her, she starts blowing things up. Ru states that only happened once because the nobles were so demanding and needed to be taught a lesson, and it was an accident. She finally admits she went a little too far. She also explains that Tia is a bit stronger than her, which is why she ran into the forest. Tia is surprised that Ru is admitting her weaknesses, and Ru explains it's because she realizes how weak she is after facing the dogs. Ru offers Tia to live with them, guessing she will like it. Tia agrees, and Ru takes her around to show her the crops. They spend the day harvesting some veggies, and Hiraku gives Tia some to try, which she ends up liking. After a few days, Tia asks Hiraku if they can grow more strawberries. Hiraku explains they can, but even if they expand, they won't be able to keep up with the harvesting of everything. Tia realizes they indeed can use more hands. Hiraku also notes that even if they do manage to harvest all, they may not be able to eat it all. Hiraku sees that Kuroichi, Kuroni, Kurasan, and Kuroin also have 3 to 4 children now, and the dog family has grown quite a bit. Soon they will grow and go find themselves partners. Ru realizes that means they will become even more, causing Hiraku to realize the hut he built them won't be big enough. Hiraku then decides to build a dog area next to the orchard. Hiraku still hasn't named the new pups as there are too many, and he has a hard time thinking of names. Hiraku then sees Zabuton's children leaving, but sees some of them decided to stay. Tia tells Hiraku that she will be gone for a while and flies away. A few days later, Tia returns with a bunch of high elf girls. The elves introduce themselves as Lee, Leaf, Leka, Lise, Lili, Lita, and Lise. Hiraku notices they all have names starting with La, and Lee explains it's because they are all related. They came per Tia's suggestion and would like to live here. Tia states they have a sad backstory. They used to live in a village in the north, but most of their people got wiped out after they got dragged into the War of the Humans. Their race had scattered, and since then, they have been wandering the land looking for a new home. Ru also suggests they take the girls as she heard that high elves are a talented race. She guesses they are still young, and Lee states she is the oldest, a bit over 400 years, while Lise is the youngest, a bit over 300 years old. Tia and Ru insist, and Hiraku agrees as long as they can get along with the rest of the roommates. Lee wonders who are the roommates, and Ru introduces Zabuton and the dogs, which causes the girls to faint. As the elves wanted to live together, Hiraku decided to build them one big house. The elves know more about construction, and Hiraku decides to follow their orders while they are building the house, mostly just digging and bringing them lumber. After 10 days, the house is complete. It's quite big, and Ru and Tia are impressed. Hiraku feels jealous but has now learned the elves' techniques and considers rebuilding his hut. The elves' house has one big living room where they can all gather and dine. To each side of the living room, they have storage rooms. On the second floor, they have individual rooms. Hiraku is surprised to learn that the elves also eat meat and use fire. His image of elves is that they wake up with sunrise and go to sleep when the sun goes down. They are one with nature, love trees, eat mostly berries, and refuse to wear any metal. Lee tells Hiraku to not underestimate the forest, as if you try to live like that, you will die quite fast. Lee explains they plan on doing some mining and blacksmithing work, but first they need to build up a furnace that can melt iron. Hiraku is surprised as in his image, that was a dwarf's work. Soon they build a furnace and start producing things. Having a metal pan, Hiraku gets excited, feeling his civilization is advancing, and guesses the elves can do anything. Lee states there are some things they couldn't do, like settle down and reproduce. Hiraku states they already achieved one of those things but decides to not say anything about the second, seeing how they were looking and smiling at him. The elves had seen there is a wheat field, and Hiraku explains they have harvested it and turned it into flour. Lise then asks if they can make some bread, showing that they have a jar with yeast, and Hiraku happily accepts. As they enjoy some bread, Hiraku guesses it's time to expand the wheat field. But in that moment he realizes something and asks Ru if this land belongs to anyone. Ru explains no one owns the forest, but it's technically under the control of the Demon Lord. Hearing that, Hiraku starts to worry and wonders if the Demon Lord will have something against it, but Ru assures him that since he built this himself, the land belongs to him. Tia, Ru, and Lee are amazed by Hiraku as not only he tamed the Inferno wolves, but a demon spider too. The crops are also amazing, and Lee wonders if the soil here is actually that good for them to grow that well. But it's surprising how he lacks knowledge about the world around him. He had the wrong impression of what elves were and had no idea what angels are, so the girls conclude it's more than just lacking some knowledge. Meanwhile, Hiraku is in his hut and makes a wooden cup. He realizes he hasn't progressed his waterway in a while and wonders if the girls will help. Zabuton proudly shows Hiraku a queen bee it caught. Since it has no plans to eat the bee and the bee isn't aggressive, Hiraku decides to build a small house for it, hoping to harvest some honey. Tia, flying by, is curious about what Hiraku is doing but is afraid of disturbing the hive and apologizes. Hiraku realizes he needs to plant some flowers for the bees. After that, he digs a large hole, intending to use it as a reservoir, and explains to Lee that he plans to draw water from the river. Lee wonders how far he's progressed with his waterway, but upon hearing he's barely started, she suggests they first decide what to build it out of. Hiraku considers using stone, but Lee explains it would be difficult to obtain. He then thinks about using wood, but Lee explains that because of its length, connecting many pieces would lead to too much leakage. Finally, Hiraku decides to use dirt and, using his powerful tool, compacts it until it's as solid and sturdy as concrete. Hiraku lets the elves handle the foundation of the waterway while he focuses on sealing the seams and strengthening the foundation. Hiraku also manages to catch some fish. Tia and Rue recognize the fish as the aggressive ones from the Forest of Death and wonder if it's safe to eat them. They make Hiraku taste them first before eating, but end up finding them delicious. Since the elves also like them, Hiraku captures more fish and preserves them with salt. Hiraku is surprised he was able to grow some rice, but now that he has easy access to water, he decides to build a rice paddy. After digging the area and flooding it, the girls wonder if he intends to make a lake to grow fish in. Hiraku denies it and asks them to help him plant some rice. The rice fields grow quickly, and Hiraku teaches the girls how to harvest them. After drying the rice, he uses his tool to create an old-fashioned thresher and then a sieve to remove the leaves and plant matter. He then uses a mortar to remove the husk from the rice and a pestle to polish the rice. The girls note it's a lot of work and wonder if they can finally eat, but Hiraku explains they first need to cook it and shows them how to do it. Finally, Hiraku makes the rice into rice balls and adds some fish from the other day. The girls end up enjoying the rice balls so much that they eat them all, leaving only a single rice grain for Hiraku. While the girls can clean themselves using magic, Hiraku can't, so he decides to build a bath. The girls suggest they can wash in the river, but Hiraku explains the benefits of having a bath and that they can bathe in the winter without freezing. The girls help him, and the bath progress goes well. However, Hiraku then realizes and wonders if it's okay to put the wastewater back into the river. Tia suggests they use slimes as they will eat the waste products and purify the water. Tia brings some slimes, and Hiraku builds a purification pool for them. Tia explains they can also put them into the toilets, but Hiraku isn't sure he wants to do his business over a slime's head. Hiraku finds some mushrooms growing on his wood logs, and as he isn't sure which ones are poisonous and which aren't, he wonders if he can grow some mushrooms himself. He uses his tool and hits the wood, hoping for shiitake, shinji, and other mushrooms. In the evening, Hiraku teaches the girls how to use the bath. He explains that after they undress, they should wash themselves in the washing area. Lee stops him and suggests it would be easier if he shows them. Hiraku agrees and demonstrates the steps. As he gets into the bath, he almost melts from joy. The girls then don't wait and start following the steps to join him. Hiraku states he will leave to let them enjoy it and use it after them, but the girls suggest they can bathe together so they won't need to heat up water again. Surrounded by the girls, Hiraku doesn't feel he can relax and wonders if he should build a separate bath for men. However, the girls state it would be unfair to have a private bath just for him. The next day, Hiraku sees that he has grown some mushrooms and decides to make a mushroom hot pot tonight. He then hears the dogs and sees that they found 5 new elves and brought them in. As the girls introduce them, Hiraku notices they all have names starting with Lie and concludes they must be related. Lee explains that she knows them from their previous village, where they last saw each other 200 years ago. Hiraku accepts that they live there too, and Lee wants to start building them a house. She also suggests they can make some improvements to Hiraku's house. Kuro notices that the number of females in Hiraku's group has increased. Kuro explains that he lived alone in the forest and never lost a fight to another male. He intended to live as he pleased, but one day he met a female who ended up defeating him. Since then, they started traveling together. The female eventually became pregnant, and Kuro was fine with finally having a family. However, they encountered a grappler bear, the king of the forest, which defeated them. Injured, they couldn't hunt for food. They became so weak that their normal prey drove them away, and eventually they reached the center of the forest, where even the grappler bear avoids. There, they found a human male living alone. Normally, humans hide in the forest and don't stay in one place for long. Kuro wondered how such a weak human could survive alone, but then felt the limitless power coming from the almighty tool. Kuro thought this was the end for them, but Hiraku shared his food with them and took care of them. Kuro and his wife then decided that Hiraku would be their master. He gave them names and a place to live. Soon, their children grew, and Kuro's family increased. Hiraku also became the leader of a large pack of his own. Kuro's only concern is that Hiraku doesn't seem to understand that Kuro is a terrifying monster known as an inferno wolf. However, Kuro is sure it will be fine and is thankful for meeting Hiraku. Hiraku's new house is finally finished. The girls take him on a tour, showing him around the house and his room. Hiraku notices a room with a bolt lock and wonders what's inside. When he opens it and sees a bed for 2, he quickly closes it, pretending he didn't see it. The next day, Hiraku decides to try making a dish he hasn't made before, curry. He takes the girls to a section of his crops where they see lots of unfamiliar plants. He explains that some of them won't grow in areas with any snowfall, but thanks to a special tool, he can grow them here. He gathers spices for the curry, starting with cumin, then turmeric, which gives the curry its color, and coriander seeds, which need to be ground into powder. He also takes some cilantro leaves, which the girls notice and decide to research because of their strong smell. Hiraku then gathers black pepper and cayenne peppers. With all the spices gathered, Hiraku starts cooking, only to find that only Lee is there. She explains that Rue and Tia are busy researching how to create a powerful protection talisman. Hiraku begins by heating rapeseed oil and adding rabbit meat. While that cooks, he grinds all the spices except for the cumin. Once the meat has some color, he removes it to avoid overcooking, then cooks the cumin with the leftover bits and juices. He adds diced onions, ginger, and garlic, then tomatoes, sautéing everything until it turns into a paste. He adds the ground spices and some salt, then adds the meat and boiled soybeans with water. As it cooks, Hiraku suddenly realizes he forgot something: naan. He explains it's made like regular bread up until the part where it's left to rise, then they roll the dough with a rolling pin. The girls return just as Hiraku finishes cooking, and they all sit down to eat. Hiraku explains how to eat the naan with the curry, and the girls enjoy it enough to ask for seconds. Rue and Tia offer some curry to the dogs, but they run away upon smelling it. With winter approaching, Hiraku prepares by gathering firewood. He knows Zabuton will go into hibernation, so he asks him in advance to make some extra blankets. Hiraku has Rue and Tia preserve some meat by smoking and drying it, especially since the dogs won't be able to hunt much during the winter. He's also working on a way to preserve vegetables and creates a box with 2 floors. Vegetables go on the top floor and are covered in a blanket and snow, while any water from the snow gathers on the bottom floor, keeping the vegetables dry. Seeing the girls use magic, Hiraku wishes he could too, but he's glad they're around as they've helped him a lot since he's only capable of gardening and cooking. Rue says he's amazing for being able to live for so long in this forest. During winter, they stay indoors more, so Hiraku decides to make some board games like Reversi, chess, and a mahjong set. He explains Reversi and its rules to the girls. Rue finds the rules simple and wonders if it will be fun, but Tia says it allows for complicated strategies. Hiraku compliments Tia for realizing it, annoying Rue, who then challenges Tia. As they play, Tia is winning, but Rue flips the board, pretending it was an accident. They decide to start again, but Tia uses magic to restore the board exactly as it was. Rue tries again, but Tia restores it again. They agree to best 2 out of 3, and Hiraku checks on the other girls, noticing Kuro giving advice on moving a piece. He's surprised to see other dogs playing chess and decides never to challenge them to a game after feeling an odd energy from them. Rue decides to play with the dogs, but she loses and doesn't flip the table, afraid of Kuro. Hiraku then plays mahjong with Kuro, Tia, and Lee, but despite thinking Kuro wouldn't understand the rules so quickly, he loses badly, with Kuro winning. Feeling down, Hiraku decides to make a mini bowling game. Since Rue wonders why they need to knock down the pins, he names them as some bad guys. As they play games each day, winter passes quickly and spring comes. One morning, Zabuton alerts them to something big coming from the sky. Hiraku guesses it's a dragon, but Tia corrects him, it's a wyvern. The wyvern attacks Hiraku's group, breathing fire, but Rue and Tia use magic to defend themselves. The fire spreads into the crops, but the elves quickly put it out. Hiraku wonders what to do and how to stop the wyvern. He summons a powerful tool which surprises him by turning into a spear. He throws it at the wyvern, who creates a 3-layer barrier, but the spear pierces it and injures its wing. He throws it again, piercing its chest and killing it. Hiraku wonders if it's common to encounter wyverns, but Rue explains they are rare creatures. Hiroku then wonders if someone could have sent it, but Tia explains that even if that were the case, the person wouldn't have sent it alone since it's a valuable creature. Hiraku then assumes it was just a fortunate encounter. He then wonders if they can eat it and the girls explain it's considered a delicacy. Hiraku cooks 3 dishes with the wyvern meat and all the girls enjoy it. Rue asks Tia if she could have blocked Hiraku's spear, but Tia, seeing that the wyvern wasn't able to stop it, says she wouldn't have been able to either. Rue guesses it was luck that they first met the dogs and not Hiraku. At the demonic kingdom of Galgardo, in the demon lord's castle, the great generals receive a report that a wyvern was defeated. Randon can't believe it, as when one gets close to their territory, they usually mobilize their entire military force. Beazle states the wyvern was attacked from the ground and killed in 2 hits. Randon fears they won't be able to fight someone that powerful. Beazle reminds them they are the 4 generals, and they need to handle the situation before fear spreads. Randon then suggests they should resign, but Beazle tries to dissuade him. At Gatekeeper Dragons, in Drime's lair, Dorium, a blue dragon, asks Gucci if he saw the fight, and Gucci confirms it. Dorium wonders what would happen if he took a spear attack, and Gucci guesses it would likely pierce cleanly through him. Dorium ponders what to do, and Gucci notes it would be foolish to attack. Hiraku enjoys the wyvern meat but feels something is missing and decides to finally make some alcohol. He realizes wine exists in this world and decides to make it from grapes. The girls are excited and they quickly harvest the grapes. Hiraku then creates a place to ferment the grapes and asks the girls to stomp on them. Initially feeling a bit weird, they find it easier with some sort of rhythm. The elves suggest a song from their village and start singing. They fill several barrels, and Hiraku decides to let the yeast on the skin of the grapes ferment it for them. Hiraku wonders if they made too much, but hearing that the girls will drink it in no time, he wonders if he made too little. Meanwhile, the god observes Hiraku and wonders if this is enough for him to forgive him, but the goddess of agriculture tells him it isn't, as he punished an innocent soul and, while trying to save it, ended up sending him to the forest of death. The goddess can't believe that he also gave him a replica of the Holy Lance Grime. God explains that he is only using it as a farming tool and he got permission. However, the goddess states he didn't tell her he was giving it to a human, which should drain all of their life force and kill them instantly. God states he is fine as he gave him a super healthy body and he must have fast recovery. The goddess states he was just being careless. She is also angry that the god statues that Hiraku made, she appears like an old man. God tries to say it's not his fault, but she doesn't want to listen and punishes him to sit for 300 years. Zabuton signals Hiraku and he sees that the dogs and spiders had caught another girl. Rue sees it's her younger sister, Flora. As they take her to the village, Flora explains that she heard the angel was after her and she followed her to the forest. Hiraku suggests that she stays there for a while to rest. Flora accepts but feels strange that Hiraku is Rue's husband. Rue explains that he is the master of the Inferno Wolves and also took down a wyvern. Hearing that, Flora quickly apologizes. Hiraku realizes that Kuro isn't a dog but a wolf and wonders about the Inferno part. Kuro then breathes fire, and Hiraku is impressed. Rue and Tia are surprised he didn't know, as they are well-known beasts, and they live quite a long time with him. Hiraku prepares some food for Flora, who ends up enjoying it. He shares that he really wants to make some miso and soy sauce, and as Flora doesn't know what that is, he explains that they are made from fermented soybeans. As Flora wonders what is fermented, he explains how cheese and wine are made. Hearing about the microorganisms, Flora is excited for a new subject she could research. After a few days, Flora leaves, but in a month she returns to live there and has brought her maids as well. Anne speaks on behalf of all the maids and tells Hiraku that he can use them as he wants. Hiraku sees that Flora has brought 2 cows as well and gets excited that they can make butter and cheese now. Tia realizes that the vampires, elves, wolves, and spiders are all large groups now, but she is alone. She tells Hiraku that she will leave for a while and flies away. Tia returns soon and has brought her underlings, 3 angels, Grand Maria, Koodle, and Korum, some lizard men represented by Dogga and a chicken. With the arrival of the maids, who are a race of ogres, all of the chores start to get done a lot faster. Hiraku notices that they don't cook any complicated dishes and decides to teach them all the cooking methods he knows. That ends up interesting the ogres, who then start cooking. The 3 angels that Tia brought are instructed by Tia to patrol the forest. Hiraku wondered why they appeared with armors, but realizes that Tia planned to have them as security after the appearance of the wyvern. The lizard men are in charge of all the labor that requires strength outdoors, and thanks to them, their construction work is moving faster than before. Hiraku makes Dogga wear a scarf around his arm, as he isn't able to tell them apart. Hiraku realizes that their numbers had increased a lot. Lee then comes and tells him that she brought all the elves she found in the forest. Hiraku then sees another large group of elves, but notices that they are all female. He wonders about the male elves and Lee explains that the men didn't survive. However, they intend to make many. Hiraku is happy for them but decides not to ask how they intend to do that. Several days later, Hiraku calls all the representatives to talk with them and asks them how to name the village. Rue suggests they name it after Hiraku, but Hiraku doesn't like the sound of it. Anne suggests they name it after the forest, but hearing the forest is called the Forest of Death, Hiraku feels that's a scary name. Zabuton then points at the door, and as Hiraku opens it, he sees the Great Tree and decides to name it the Great Tree Village. That evening, he announces the village name to everyone and explains they will be having a party to celebrate it. Everyone starts calling Hiraku their mayor. Hiraku states they need to decide that later together, but the girls tell him that everyone is already calling him that. The village then celebrates by drinking the first batch of wine they made. Hiraku has just become the mayor of the Great Tree Village, but his daily routine remains largely the same. Then, one day, a messenger from the demonic kingdom arrives. Beezle, the messenger, requests to speak with the village leader and Hiraku steps forward. Beezle presents a gift to Hiraku and explains that the demon lord wishes to discuss the status of the settlement. Hiraku recalls that the land was under the protection of the demon lord and wonders if they will demand taxes or even evict them. Hiraku suggests to Beezle that if the demon lord allows them to stay, they'll pay a portion of their harvest as tax, proposing 10%. Hiraku worries it might be too low, but Beezle agrees to it. They agree that the tax will be collected each year before winter. With this, a contract is signed. Hiraku's village will pay 10% of their crop yield, but exempting milk, eggs, honey, and alcohol. If the demonic kingdom is interested in these products, they can trade for them. Hiraku feels he might have been too assertive in negotiations and gives Bezel a gift in return. After Bezel leaves, the girls praise Hiraku for his negotiation, but mention that usually taxes run between 50% to 60%. They also appreciate that collecting the tax forces the demonic kingdom to officially recognize their residency. Having the protection of the demon lord is seen as a significant advantage. Rue is particularly excited about the gift they received from Bezel, an all-purpose medicine. Bezel reports to the other 4 generals, surprising them with news that the village is submitting to them despite being able to defeat a wyvern. Randon wonders if there's an ulterior motive. Bezel shares the same concern, explaining he had to accept the conditions as the vampire princess and the angel of annihilation were present, along with an army of high elves, a pack of inferno wolves, and a trio of killer angels. If they hadn't accepted, they would have become enemies of the demonic kingdom. Gratz notices they received a gift as well and decides to inspect it in case it's dangerous. Inside, he finds fruits resembling apples but with better shape and color. Bezel notices the cloth in which the apples were wrapped is made by a great demon spider. Gratz is surprised, as great demon spiders once fought previous demon lords to a standstill. Dorame, the true ruler of the dragons, also visits the village. Gucci presents a gift and explains that Dorame's lair is located to the south. Though it's a considerable distance, they consider themselves neighbors and came to greet them. Hiraku is surprised by Dorame's repeated bowing, and Gucci explains that Dorame is too large to enter buildings. Gucci asks Dorame to take on a smaller form, and he transforms into a human. After enjoying some food and drink, Dorame expresses a desire to stay and live in the village, but Gucci reminds him of his duty to protect his domain and warns he might be a nuisance to the villagers if he stays too long. After these visits, Hiraku decides to build a guest house to better accommodate visitors. Initially proposing a small house, the girls suggest a larger one, considering visitors usually come in large groups. They start construction on the guest house. Hiraku also plans a more proper way to welcome guests. Currently, the angels find visitors, capture them, and bring them to the village entrance. Additionally, when Zabuton sounds the alarm, everyone arms themselves. Hiraku devises a new signal for visitors, giving Zabuton a bell to ring. He wants to greet visitors with Rue and Tia, but the idea is rejected, and he's forced to include elves, oni maids, and lizardmen. Soon, Garf and a few beastmen from the Howling Village arrive as guests, seeking to establish a relationship with Hiraku's village. Rue handles the situation and asks if that's all of them. Garf confirms, and Rue explains they'll consider anyone else an enemy. The Inferno Wolves bring more men from Garf's group, and he apologizes. Rue instructs them to behave and invites them into the village. Once in the guest house, they're locked in. Tia explains that all previous guests brought presents, and though they're unsure if these guests are enemies, they're not following normal procedures and won't be treated as regular visitors. The girls are against offering fancy food or alcohol, but Hiraku convinces them to provide some alcohol. While the beastmen eat and drink, Hiraku asks them how they learned about the village. Garf explains they heard from the demon lord's men. In the Howling Village, they make a living by hunting or mining and used to trade with human villages. However, recent troubles made trading with humans unstable, so they look for new trading partners. Tia asks why some of them remained hidden, and one explains they would report back if something happened. The next day, Garf proposes trading and having an open market, but since it's difficult for them to come to the village with goods, he suggests Hiraku come to their village, assuming he can navigate the forest easily. Hiraku agrees and decides to use wolves to pull a cart with goods for the first trade. Garf brings items made from the ores they mined and asks for food in return. Hiraku agrees and brings the available food for trade. Before leaving, Garf admits they didn't know about the custom of bringing gifts but promises to bring one next time, though it won't be fancy. Hiraku assures him it's the thought that counts. Time passes, and Hiraku decides it's time to trade with the Howling Village. The girls don't allow him to leave, so Tia goes with some lizardmen. Normally, the trip would take 10 days, but Dorame agrees to transport them faster in exchange for a barrel of wine. Since his first visit, Dorame regularly brings treasures or weapons as gifts, so no one minds. A few days later, Tia returns with a sad Dorame. She explains that when the beastmen saw them with the dragon, they were shocked and initially refused to accept anything, but after some free samples, they loved the goods and traded everything, even the barrel of wine meant for Dorame. Hiraku tells Dorame he can have more wine at dinner, lifting his spirits. Tia reveals that the mayor of the Howling Village asked if some of their people could come and live in Hiraku's village. Hiraku agrees, though he requested 2 young men as well. The female beastmen arrive, and Sina introduces herself. She expresses gratitude for being accepted and says they are prepared to be used as Hiraku sees fit, but asks not to be abandoned. Hiraku tells them to take their time getting used to the place and assures them they won't be kicked out. Sina reveals they brought 3 young men, which turn out to be boys. Hiraku is surprised but realizes they might contribute to the village's future in 5 or 10 years. Initially, the beastmen feared they would be treated poorly, but as it turned out, they quickly adjusted to village life. Hiraku noticed Sina's use of magic and assumed everyone could use it except him. She tried to comfort him, explaining that beastmen children couldn't use magic yet, but they could learn together. Hiraku, however, knew that one day they would easily surpass him. While harvesting apples, Hiraku heard noise near the village and felt the ground shake. Gran Maria quickly reported a grappling bear and a bloody viper fighting in the northern forest. Hiraku wondered if they could eat the bear meat and convinced Gran Maria to take him to see the monsters. Despite Gran Maria's suggestion to plan first, Hiraku insisted she drop him off. Alone, he attacked and swiftly killed the monsters. The killer angels praised his feat. Hiraku then decided to cook the bear with wine, making wine braised bear dish, but found it quite gamey. The girls were shocked that he used their precious wine, but he explained that cooking with wine was normal. He fried the viper and enjoyed it more as it tasted like fried chicken. Since the viper tasted like chicken, Hiraku wanted to try something. He went to Flora and asked her if she had something like an antibacterial agent. He explained that he needed something that could kill microorganisms and prevent stomach aches or illness. Flora offered him a potion, explaining that it would blow up everything. Hiraku asked for something weaker and she gave him another potion. Hiraku also wondered how the miso production was coming along, and Flora explained that she had made no progress. She had followed his instructions, but she didn't notice any fermentation and the potion she used had blown up her house 3 times already. Hiraku suggested they try again. The next day, Hiraku gathered some chicken eggs. He then added salt and vinegar. After mixing it, he added some oil and got mayonnaise, which would go perfectly with the fried viper. Hiraku then proceeded with the miso, starting by simmering the soybeans he and Flora had soaked in water. Next, they ground them and he used the almighty tool to add koji mold. They formed balls and packed them into barrels to leave for a few months. Ru then called Hiraku, informing him they had visitors. The visitors were a few elder dwarfs led by Donovan, who had heard that they had high-quality alcohol and wished to share some with them. The girls explained that they couldn't give it for free. Donovan stated they didn't have money, but they had technology. They had spent their lives studying alcohol production and seeing the fine crops they had, they could help turn them into fine alcohol. Hearing that, the girls quickly agreed. The dwarfs then used distillation and made corn whiskey. Eventually, Donovan and his men remained in the village and worked as the village brewers. Later, the village had a welcoming celebration for the beastmen and dwarfs. Hiraku realized that finally some men had joined and asked Donovan if any girl caught his eye. Donovan then explained that the girls were too young for him and if they couldn't grow a beard, they were not for him. One day, Hiraku saw a dragon approaching. As it didn't look peaceful, he prepared for a fight. Dorame then showed up and stopped the dragon. As the 2 dragons stared at each other, a third, scarier one appeared. Hiraku then threw his spear, but the dragon managed to dodge at the last moment. Guchai then stopped Hiraku, explaining that they were not enemies and were not fighting. As the dragons landed and transformed into human forms, Guchai explained that the 2 others were Dorame's wife, Grafaloon, and daughter, Lastest. As Dorame constantly sneaked out to come to the village, his wife and daughter thought he might be cheating, as he always took something from the treasury and returned in the morning. Hiraku had built Dorame a house there so that he didn't need to go home drunk, but he guessed that was a bad idea now. Dorame tried to explain that this was all high-level politics, but the women were sure he was hiding something. Dorame explained that he had no courage for an affair and the women agreed. Hiraku apologized for earlier, but Dorame made his family apologize as well. Lastest then apologized for almost burning the village down, and Grafaloon apologized for the thought of obliterating the man who had pointed a spear at her daughter. Hiraku was glad that things were sorted out and left. Dorame then asked his wife and daughter if they understood what he was doing and Grafaloon confirmed, noting that while they had small numbers, they had the power to challenge them, which was something she hadn't expected to see. Lastest also noted that Grafaloon couldn't defend against that attack and had to avoid it. Grafaloon explained that was mainly thanks to the spider who had pulled her out and was an old friend of hers. If he hadn't pulled her out, she wouldn't have been alive. Grafaloon then told Lastest to live in this village and make sure that this power was never turned against them. Hiraku agreed with Lastamoon living there and she quickly started helping them with the work. However, as she was a dragon and was too strong, she would often break anything she touched. Hiraku wondered what to do with her as Dorame had asked him to give her some work. He then noticed that the wolves were scared and Tia stated it wasn't just the wolves, but the chickens and cows as well. She explained that the dragons weren't just powerful, but they had wisdom and knowledge too. Hiraku then got an idea and sent Lastest to handle the diplomatic relations with Beezle, who was shocked to see a dragon. She wondered what he wanted and Beezle barely explained that he wanted more fruits like the ones they got last time. Lastest Moon stated that they were low on oranges, but they had strawberries. Scared, Beazle decided to take 10 boxes. She also suggested some apples, pears, persimmons, and watermelons, and Beazle took them too. Beazle reported back that they now had a dragon. While it might be risky, they decided to send a spy. Beazle called his daughter, Florum, and explained that he wanted her to investigate the village's military might. Florum went to the village and was welcomed by Lastest Moon, who took her around. However, while showing her around, Lastest Moon was informed they had spotted a messenger from Howling Village, and she decided to leave Florum to look around by herself. Florum then went around and saw all the races. Normally, she would expect Lastest Moon to command them all, but she had heard that there was someone above her who ruled everyone. She ended up seeing Hiraku, but as he was just a human, she ignored him. After meeting up with Lastest Moon again, she explained that Hiraku was the mayor. Florum couldn't believe a human was commanding them all, but Lastest Moon explained that he was strong enough to defeat her mother. Florum then started to worry as not only she didn't say hello, she was quite rude to him. Hiraku heard that Florum was Beazle's daughter and that she would be staying for a while. He saw that she was getting along with Lastest Moon, but the moment he showed up, Florum started acting quite stiff and awkward. The slimes in Teju village had begun multiplying, and now they came in multiple colors. It wasn't really noticed until a purple slime drank a barrel of alcohol, which angered the villagers. The girls decided to hold a trial and found it guilty. However, Florum explained it's just a slime and won't reflect on its actions no matter what punishment they give it. The girls realized this and decided to let it go since it was just one slime. Over time, the red slime started joining them during feasts and drinking with everyone. As autumn arrived, Hiraku and the others were enjoying a hot pot. Hiraku suggested adding seafood to make it taste even better. The girls wondered what he meant by seafood, and Hiraku mentioned things like cod, crabs, monkfish, and kombu seaweed. Rue told Flora to start researching those things. Tia was surprised that crabs could be eaten because they're hard. Florum explained that there is a harbor city called Shishato within the demonic kingdom, and they could reach it by going south from the village. Lastest Moon decided to fly there, and Florum went with her as she knew a merchant there. 3 days later, Lastest Moon and Florum returned with Michael Goran, a merchant from Shishato. After introducing himself to Hiraku, Michael showed him the fish he brought and explained that the kombu he requested is usually thrown away by their fishermen, but he had told his men to collect some. Michael explained that his visit had 3 goals: to properly greet Hiraku and thank him for requesting to do business with them, to suggest more opportunities for them to trade goods and do business, and third, to become the official government purveyor for the village, meaning he'd handle all trade between the village and the outside world. The girls explained what it meant, and Michael showed them a list of products his company trades. They further discussed the proposal. In the evening, before leaving, Michael mentioned wanting to discuss alcohol next time, but Lastest Moon yelled at him that he couldn't have it. Scared, Michael backed off the subject and left. Lastest Moon flew him back to Shishato, and as Michael looked back at the village, he felt scared just thinking about it. 3 days earlier, one of Michael's men informed him that there was a visitor who wanted to speak with him. Being busy, Michael wondered why they couldn't handle it. However, the man explained they had requested him by name and brought goods from their farm. Michael was surprised they brought goods, as it wasn't their usual practice. He suggested referring them elsewhere, but his intuition told him not to ignore this. Meeting with them, Michael was surprised to see Florum from the Chrome family and was glad he hadn't sent her away, as he might have lost his head. He was shocked to learn the other girl was Lastest Moon, the crazy dragon. They brought him goods and explained they wanted him to buy them, and in exchange, they wanted a few things they needed. As he checked the goods, he saw apples and realized they were the fruit that had entered the demonic kingdom and everyone was talking about. Each one could sell for several silver coins. He then saw other fruits and was surprised at how many they had brought. He had believed it to be quite risky, but realizing he would make lots of money, he got quite happy as it outweighed the risk. He agreed to find them what they wanted and asked his man to bring him the best products from the market. He wished to go with the girls on their way back. When he heard they were heading toward Teju village in the Forest of Death, Michael started to feel uneasy. He was scared of everyone in Teju village except Hiraku. After the deal, he felt he would be rich but wasn't sure his body would be able to handle it. Later, Hiraku made hot pot with seafood and everyone loved it. Another dragon appeared in the village. Hiraku wondered if it was related to Dorium, but as the dragon attacked and mocked Hiraku, he threw his spear at it, making it seem like he missed. Then he threw another and took down the dragon. The dragon turned into a young girl and surrendered. Dorium showed up and explained she was Hakurin, his older sister. She blamed Dorium, saying he had said he was giving Lastest Moon as a bride and wanted to marry her to the mayor one day. Dorium tried to deny it, saying he might have said it while drunk. Hakurin came to see what kind of man the mayor was and also heard he was quite strong, so she came to check him out. Dorame said it wasn't just that, she was mostly there because she was angry. Hakurin confirmed, saying Lastismund was 900 years younger than her, yet she would marry before her. Hiraku was okay with her coming to test him, but since she made a mess, he made her clean it up. After dinner, Hakurin wanted them to play mahjong but suggested they bet on something. Dorame wondered what Hiraku could bet, but Hiraku explained he couldn't bet anything, so he could only think of some punishment, like strip mahjong. Hakurin, Dorame, and Lastismund all agreed to play as they were quite competitive and didn't like losing. They started playing, and soon Hiraku found himself in his last piece of clothing. He thought he had a chance but ended up losing and was forced to take off his pants. Bizzle revealed that Hakurin had also been seen in Hiraku's village. Blatz worried even more that they had enough power to overtake the kingdom. The demon lord Gargard shared that his daughter had been in a bad mood lately and hadn't spoken to him the whole morning. Glatz then ignored the demon lord and said they needed to gather funds and prepare their military force, but saw that Randon had run away again. Hakurin decided to stay in the village and was quite skilled at any job she took, although she complained about anything she was asked to do. In the end, she became the teacher for the kids, teaching them reading, writing, and math. One day, Lamia girls led by Junia showed up, bringing gifts and asking Hiraku to spare their lives. Hiraku didn't know what they meant, so the Lamia girls explained that the younger wolves and spiders had decided to clear a dungeon they found in the forest, which forced the Lamia to flee their homes. Hiraku decided to trade the gems they mined and gave them some of their crops, and the Lamia went back to their original homes. Hiraku would be happy if they kept trading, and the Lamia agreed. However, Hiraku asked them to wear some clothes when they came because they were topless. The Lamia then started Lamia delivery service and carried the traded goods for the village. Some girls, Rosalind Griach, Roj Mamonrose, and Klakas Bugle, convinced the demonic kingdom's princess Yuri that Hiraku's village was planning something foul and intended to use Frorum as a hostage. Yuri decided to defeat the village and save Frorum. Bizzle visits Frorum and informs her that Princess Yuri intends to launch a military campaign. Rosalind, Klakas, and Roj convinced her to do so. Their target, Hiraku's village. Frorum finds the trio's decision rather foolish, especially since she had sent them reports detailing the village's strength. Bizzle explains that the reports were so exaggerated that they seemed unrealistic. He believes if Frorum tries to intervene, they'll see her as a traitor. However, he urges her to come up with a plan to stop them. With the attack scheduled for tomorrow, Frorum decides they just need to demonstrate the village's power without mobilizing its residents. They pay a group of Lamia girls led by Junia to intercept the 300 men heading towards the village, and 3 Lamia easily force them to surrender. As a result, Rosalind, Klakas, and Roj are brought to the village. Frorum explains that they want to join and work for the village under her supervision, with Hiraku having the authority to dismiss them if they harm the village. Hiraku asks about the 4th girl, who sits on a throne, and Frorum explains she's just there to observe for now. As Hiraku leaves, Frorum tells the girls that if they work honestly, their past actions will be forgiven. She also insists they hide their identities and that Princess Yuri will be treated like any other villager. Frorum then gives them a tour of the village. However, being nobles, the trio initially plans to escape, but encountering inferno wolves and spiders changes their minds. Fearful of being dismissed, they start working and assist with Frorum's tasks, eventually becoming known as the Town Hall Girls. Seeing the village's peacefulness, Yuri regrets her intention to bring war upon it. Frorum wonders why the Demon Lord didn't intervene, and Yuri explains she heard Frorum was a hostage and was concerned for her. As childhood friends, they agree Frorum will inform Yuri about everything and treat her normally. Later, Yuri helps with farm work and even enlists the trio's help. When it's time for Yuri and the girls to leave, the trio decides to stay, feeling they haven't repaid the villagers' kindness and still have much to learn. In reality, they simply enjoy the village's amenities and lack of political stress. Back home, Demon Lord Gargard complains to Bizzle about Yuri's newfound dignity and busyness. Bizzle suggests Yuri is becoming interested in politics and diplomacy, remarking on how children grow up before their parents realize it. Hearing adult, Gargard assumes Yuri has met a man and wants to harm him. Bizzle warns this attitude will make Yuri resent him, which calms Gargard. Meanwhile, in Hiraku's village, they have a surplus of food from their pre-winter harvest and no space to store it. Lastismund suggests sending some to her father, which Hiraku agrees to. Hakurin then suggests sending her parents as well. She explains her father lives in the north and her mother in the south, revealing her father to be the Emperor Dragon Dusu and her mother the Hurricane Dragon Raymer. Lastismund delivers crops to her father and then to Shishato City. On her way, she exterminates a monster attacking trade vessels. Hakurin heads north, encountering people who want to move to the village, led by Ya, who are mountain elves. They've been struggling to find food and seek refuge. Hiraku accepts them and Ya assures they're skilled hunters. Later, Hiraku learns of a new dungeon and sends a survey team to investigate. He also finishes the male bath and uses it. Outside, Forum catches the trio of girls and forces them to confess their intentions. They admit they wanted to get close to Hiraku and improve their status. Forum tells them they can't climb the ranks that way. The survey team returns, confirming a blood viper inside the dungeon. The elves want its meat for survival, as it's valuable and said to improve vitality in marital relations and bless with children. Hiraku decides to discuss it with the village. Winter arrives, and Hiraku visits Ru, who isn't feeling well. Sina suggests she might be craving sour food and shares a similar case from the village, where it led to pregnancy. Ru explains her symptoms and lack of appetite, despite being able to eat tomatoes and fruits. Hiraku wonders what happened to the other person, and Sina says they congratulated them on the baby. Ru's pregnancy is going smoothly, but it's causing her to refrain from transforming. With the maids insisting on waking up before Hiraku, he's begun to rise a bit later to allow them some rest. As the village has grown, breakfast is now split into 3 groups. Hiraku joins the first group, and during breakfast, Grand Maria informs him that 3 killer rabbits attempted to infiltrate the farm, but Kuro and the other wolves took care of them. They remark that it's fortunate the rabbits keep trying, as it provides a steady food supply. Hiraku notices that the angels are always composed and proper, but off-duty, they become lazy and rely on others for food and laundry. After breakfast, Hiraku begins his work, spotting some garden pests and eliminating them with his trusty tool. Taking a break for lunch, which isn't common there and took some time for people to get used to, Hiraku observes that the elves usually skip breakfast and were initially nervous about eating in the morning, worried about food supplies. The beastmen also weren't accustomed to daily meals and initially thought they were treated well because they would soon be thrown out. After lunch, Hiraku continues working. While having more people usually helps, tasks like tilling new fields or planting crops are handled solely by Hiraku with his almighty tool. He plants some flowers to bring color to the village. Besides farm work, Hiraku uses the tool to create various items to help villagers and is thankful to God for it. He also sometimes joins military training. Although he doesn't believe the village needs it, it's the maids who insist. Seeing them use it as exercise, he decides to join, but he's not skilled with any weapon except his tool. As it gets dark, Hiraku's workday ends, and he heads inside for dinner. The maids serve him a new dish, confident in its taste only about 20%. Hiraku suggests they only present dishes they're at least 50% confident in, but the maids refuse to waste food. Forum gives Hiraku a letter from Yuri expressing her desire for apples and a dress. Forum explains that Yuri liked the clothes made by Zabuton and wonders if Zabuton can make more for her. After dinner, Hiraku takes a bath, usually being the only one there. After bathing, he often feels uneasy as the elves seem to stalk him. Even in his room, he feels their presence and tricks them into revealing themselves before thanking God for his life and falling asleep. The dwarves are always hard at work making alcohol. Hiraku expected them to be constantly drunk, but they take their job seriously and don't drink while working. They also ask him to increase grape production by 3 times, and Hiraku agrees. Sina comes running to inform Hiraku that there's a strange man. Hiraku goes to check and finds the man bowing to the wooden god statues Hiraku had made. Hiraku wonders how he got in without Zabuton or the angels seeing him. Ru recognizes him as the progenitor, Vargreif, who is happy to see her. Vargreif explains that when he heard she was pregnant, he didn't believe it, but it seems to be true. Normally, they continue their bloodline with blood pacts and pregnancies are rare, but he states that children are treasures and tells her to take care of it. Hiraku wonders who he is, and Ru tells him to think of him as her grandfather. Vargreif explains that he is 4,000 years old and the secret to his long life is to erase his memory from time to time, except for important things like his name and clan. Vargreif apologizes for entering the village without notification, explaining that he had only intended to look around and leave, but the statue below the tree caught his attention as it was a splendid likeness of the great creator. Hiraku wonders if he's met God before, and Vargreif confirms it, saying he met him when he was born, and God told him to do his best even though he was born with a slightly abnormal body. Hiraku figures the abnormal body means he's a vampire, and Vargreif guesses the same. Vargreif explains that he has been trying to remember exactly how God looked and it must be great to live up to such a statue. Hiraku realizes he wants the statue and explains that he can't give it to him since it belongs to the village, but he will make him a new one. After making him a statue, Vargreif likes it. He wonders how much it would cost him, but Hiraku doesn't want to take money for something like that. Vargreif then states he will have to think of what he can do for him as thanks. After leaving the village, Vargreif visits a large temple. The head priest there is happy to see him, noting it's been 50 years since he last visited. Vargreif states he wants to enshrine a statue and asks for the best spot. The priest explains it is the spot of the creator god statue made by the master sculptor Torok. Vargreif then wants to move it to put the new statue there, and the priest agrees. Seeing the statue, the priest is impressed, stating it must have been made by a famous sculptor and wonders about his name so they can honor it. But Vargreif suggests not to, as Hiraku doesn't seem the type to appreciate that and he doesn't want to disturb his peaceful life. Vargreif states they quietly support him and tells the priest to inform the other temples to be respectful of Teju village. Vargreif sends Hiraku a magnificent piano. Hiraku doesn't want to take it as payment, but Vargreif insists it's a gift to celebrate Rue's pregnancy. Hiraku decides to put the piano in the dining hall. The three hall girls realize it's a piano that can only be found in large temples and is used for big ceremonies. They decide to play it as it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. However, they end up too scared to play it as they fear they may ruin or break it. They ask Hiraku to get them a piano to practice on. Hiraku doesn't understand why they don't want to play on the current one, but he asks Michael go around to get him a practice piano. Many of the girls end up enjoying the piano and try learning to play it. However, Hiraku has trouble sleeping as they also play it at night. Hiraku calls for a lunch break, but ends up continuing to work until Rue urges him to stop and join them for lunch. He wonders if she should be moving, but she explains it's fine and that she heard she needs to exercise. All the girls are also quite kind and concerned about Rue, but she explains she is fine, except for her inability to drink alcohol. The three killer angels ask Hiraku to sell off all the alcohol. Hiraku then learns that the girls decided to give up alcohol for Rue, but the thought of not being able to drink is driving them crazy. Because of that, the angels believe that selling the alcohol may solve the temptation problem. Hiraku believes they will regret selling the alcohol as it's not something they can produce quickly again. He suggests an alternative, telling them to consider how alcohol changes taste the longer it ages. Donovan and the other dwarfs ask Hiraku if they have done something wrong since no one wants to drink alcohol anymore. After Hiraku explains, Donovan is happy and suggests they don't need to lower production, but actually increase it. Hiraku agrees, noting that he is sure everyone will drink more to make up for lost time later. Rue's pregnancy is going well and the time to give birth almost arrives. Everyone in the village starts giving her various gifts. That evening, Rue feels it's time, and later she gives birth during the night. In the morning, Hiraku meets his son, Alfred, and holds him. A week has passed and Hiraku recalls how everything started from him living alone to now being a father. He isn't sure if his son is half vampire, as at the moment he looks like a human. As he recalls everyone giving presents, he decides to do something to thank them for their kindness. He gathers the girls and explains he wants to start a new system. He gives them reward medals and states they can trade them for things they like. Tia realizes that's like money and Hiraku confirms, stating he figured that one day the village will need its own currency. Until now, Hiraku has been taking all the goods and distributing them to everyone. If someone wanted something, they come and ask him, but with the increased population, handling all the transactions by himself became impossible. They wonder if they can't just continue trading goods between them. But Hiraku gives them an example where different people put different value on certain goods, which is why he wants to use currency. Since it will cause turmoil if they suddenly switch to currency, Hiraku plans to start by giving the coins as reward medals. Hiraku gives everyone 3 coins, however, as the wolves and spiders are too many, he gives each group 30 medals. Some of the people traded them right away, while others like to just have them and not spend them. Hiraku starts getting more custom orders of furniture and toys and feels he actually now works even more than before. Soon they have a big feast to celebrate the birth of Hiraku's son, where everyone is finally able to drink again. Rue brings a wooden hammer that Donovan had gifted her before, and the dwarfs bring a big barrel, stating it's a new kind of wine they made and states they need to use the wooden hammer to open the barrel. Donovan wonders how the wine is, but Rue explains that she still can't drink as she is breastfeeding the child, but she is fine watching everyone else drinking. Donovan then suggests they bottle some of it so they can drink it later. Hiraku likes the idea and states they can keep it until Alfred is old enough to drink and drink it with him. At the demonic kingdom, Beazle tells them that Hiraku's village had a baby. They had finally realized they can't defeat the village and wonder how to keep a good relationship with them. Blatt suggests they marry someone from the kingdom to someone from the village, but the demon lord mistakes it that they want to marry Yuri and is against it. Tia, Hakurin, and Frarum tell Hiraku that there are some people who want to move here as they want to escape a war. Hearing that the number is over 100, Hiraku believes they will need another village in order to take in that many people. Rue then states they should do it. The girls agree as that means more people can move in and suggest they call it the Great Tree Village too. Hiraku states it will be a lot of work, but the girls are ready to give their best. Hiraku agrees and they start thinking where to start it.